Our Free and Equal segment tonight. More trouble for Google. A possible class action lawsuit scandal over discrimination at the company deepens. This as dozens of current and former staff say they have earned less than men despite equal qualifications. Now, this suit would build on a case brought by the U.S. Department of Labor, which is arguing that Google underpays women. Watch.
In my experience, having 70 people call you when you put up a post about a company is a very large outpouring of dissatisfaction.
Back in April, the Office of Federal Contractor Compliance Programs, a division of the Department of Labor, testified in federal court about an ongoing investigation into Google's pay practices. The OFCCP told The Guardian the department has received compelling evidence of very significant discrimination against women in the most common positions at Google headquarters. Discrimination against women in Google is quite extreme.
And they complained to human resources and nothing was done about it.
Finberg, based in San Francisco, is now preparing to file a class action lawsuit after interviewing dozens of current and former Google employees. He says the women complained they were getting paid a quarter to a third less than men doing the same work.
The culture at Google is hostile to women, that women tend to be channeled into what are perceived to be softer positions. Men get the code positions are more highly paid and more highly valued at Google.
Now, the irony is that Google just fired an employee, the one behind the infamous Google memo. And in it, he addressed the gender wage gap at Google. So is this tech giant really the champion for diversity and women like it claims to be? With me now, attorney Lisa Garber. Lisa, so let's take our audience back. This is a story that's not being talked about enough. I mean, we heard all about the memo and this, employee that apparently thinks that men are better than women. That's how the media is portraying it. But there's this lawsuit, or the Department of Labor had been digging into Google, trying to figure out if there is wage issues going on there and if the complaints are true.
Hi, it's great to be here with you tonight. And this is a problem that's been really taking place in Silicon Valley for years now. And this is a problem with how women are treated in the technology industry, unfortunately. And Google's right now at the forefront. We've seen Uber, we've seen other tech giants. Google right now, especially after last week with the James Damore memo saying women are biologically just not as capable of handling technical jobs. And that's why we're seeing this backlash. The Department of Labor actually filed the lawsuit back in January of this year. We're seeing some of that come through now. Basically, Google's audited as a federal contractor really frequently by the Office of Federal Contract Compliance, and they saw a really large, what they called extreme wage gap between men and women, and that's a big no-no as a federal contractor. There are also other state and federal laws that apply, and now we're seeing this class action attorney from San Francisco, California, who's trying to garner attention. And he's already gotten, as he said, 60 to 70 women that have come forward from this tech giant saying we weren't paid fairly, we weren't promoted fairly, and we weren't given jobs fairly.
And what you're talking about is the separate class action lawsuit over this information. Now, I find it interesting that Google only wanted to provide a limited amount of data. So if they had nothing to hide, why wouldn't they just give all the data over?
That's a very good point. And really what's been going on is the Department of Labor has been auditing them for some time. So just to be clear, they have provided some records. They're claiming now that it's a privacy issue. They're saying they're requesting way too much information. It has salary information, all of this private protected information. They shouldn't have to give it forward. They've given everything they need to. Google's also claiming that they've done an internal audit themselves. And in this way, they've already found there's no pay gap, there's no problem, just leave us alone. Department of Labor is saying no, and that's why they're pushing. And you're correct, this class action is separate. It hasn't been filed yet. They're just trying to get it in gear. And we're seeing that this class action attorney is probably going to be successful. There are state and federal laws that are obviously being violated.
So I want to point out something. When it comes to the gender wage gap, I don't believe the national statistics, the way that they come up with that number. I think that you're comparing apples with oranges when they just lump everyone up in one group and just calculate all the men and women workers and then, women make 70 cents on the dollar. But I think that if you were to actually dig into the information of some companies, it's very possible that that exists. But what I find interesting with Google, like I had mentioned, they're the champions for women and diversity, but it seems like they're the ones that have the problem. Of course, this needs to be investigated. And like Damore had mentioned in his Google memo, that some women were taking on different roles. They were taking time off. Maybe they just didn't have as much interest in technology. I don't know how you feel on that. But at the end of the day, state law obviously requires equal pay. And so for 70 women to come out and say that they're, discriminated against in the workplace in a sense that they cannot get the job that they want, or that they maybe know that their fellow coworker who happens to be a male is making more money. That's an issue. Do you find this number of 70 is that, pretty alarming or astonishing to you?
I'm not astonished because as a woman in technology, I specialize in cybersecurity law. This is what happens on a daily basis. And I completely agree with you. Google should be forthright and really come forward and address everything. They're saying they did an internal audit. We aren't able to see the statistics. And I agree with you. Across different industries, the numbers are probably different. So it's not really fair. It's like comparing apples to oranges. But I think this is something that happens. And you're not just talking about pay, but you're talking about promotions. You're talking about moving up in a company. And you're talking about being given a design job versus a coding job. And Google pays those differently. So I think for these 70 women to have already come forward, they're extremely brave to do so. That might affect their reputation in Silicon Valley. And this is an important issue. And we really, as a country, have to become united for equal pay for women.
Yeah, and there's great information. Like I said, I just think it's pretty rich that this is Google that is being accused of this, and some of the other tech giants that are constantly lecturing us, pushing their liberal agenda on us, telling us about the women's wage gap when they're the ones that have the problem. And we've had this happen in the past with some of the female candidates like Hillary Clinton and Elizabeth Warren. They lecture us about the wage gap, yet when you actually dive into the numbers and use the way that they calculate it, they're the ones with the wage gap problem. So that all needs to be looked at. Thank you so much for your insight.